We move now to leaders' questions. Under Standing Order 36, Deputy Pearse Doherty, please.
Agus ta ebrani agus Charlie fod an statig strahalt leis an géir cé maraltala agus an rialtas de dhéar na Charlie seo a higan an brúataru agus a feimlín an sin hantacula. Ac yn ed seo, net budget egan dela a hort an tasi, bei brisio egan del seo an seo fwn yn tauri agus bei mi yn y jacre a mahroin a gylor Charlie. Taoiseach, the latest consumer price index published this morning by the CSO shows that inflation has continued to rise to over 9%, the highest rate in 4 decades. And workers and families are facing alarming increases in the cost of fuel, energy, the cost of food, the cost of transport. And persistent failures in housing and childcare see households, renters and families paying more and more for keeping a roof over their heads and raising their children. And we all recognise on this side of the House the causes of the cost of living crisis, driven by global factors, including the illegal Russian invasion of Ukraine, but also by domestic factors. The causes do not remove responsibilities of government. The impact of this cost of living crisis hits lower and middle income households hardest. And that is clear to anybody who has heard from families who've having to turn off their heating or put less food on the table because they simply have no other choice. 1 in 3 households today are living in energy poverty. And this week we heard from the Children's Rights Alliance that 62,000 of our children are living in consistent poverty. Now, most people are feeling the squeeze, but lower and middle income households are bearing the brunt. And they need a government that understands their struggle, and they need a government that responds to them, to their needs. And today this Dáil will rise for its recess and won't return until September. But workers and families will continue to struggle week in, week out over those months, over those summer months with this cost of living crisis. Now, Taoiseach, you have refused point blank to act on the calls from Sinn Féin to bring forward an emergency budget with measures that would protect and provide certainty and support for these households. Instead, you have told them that they should wait till the end of September. And this is despite organisations such as the Central Bank, the ESRI, our own budget watchdog, all saying that the government has the capacity to provide further support to struggling households and to provide it now. And this support is necessary. It's support that would help relieve the pressure on households that they face and help them navigate through the difficult times, the difficult weeks, the difficult days and months that are ahead. Now, for months now, Sinn Féin has proposed sensible and affordable measures that would provide real relief to these families by increasing social welfare rates in response to the rising prices, by introducing cost of living cash payments to those in low and middle incomes, by reducing childcare fees, by supporting renters, by putting 1 month's rent back into their pockets and banning rent increase, by providing greater support for more families with back-to-school costs, by reducing fuel costs for those struggling to heat their homes and fill their tanks. Now, these are all measures that could have been introduced before the Dáil broke this summer, but they weren't. And they should have been Taoiseach. They should have been acted upon. You should have listened not just to Sinn Féin, but you should listen to the pleas and the demands from ordinary people out there who are struggling just to get by. So, Taoiseach, we know that everybody can't be protected from every price increase. We acknowledge that. But the government can and they should have done more to protect and support workers and families. But you decided otherwise. So as this Dáil breaks for the summer, what is your message to the tens of thousands of families who so desperately needed your government to do more for them right here, right now, before the summer break? Those families who are just struggling to survive, who are struggling to cling on. So once this Dáil returns, will you commit to implementing the solutions that we in Sinn Féin have put forward? Some of them I've listed today.
Thanks very much, Deputy. The numbers from the CSO this morning indicate that inflation has now risen to 9.6%. This is the highest rate of inflation that we've experienced in 40 years. And I think it confirms what people are experiencing in their daily lives. We see it at the pumps, we see it in the supermarket, we see it in our utility bills. The price of everything is going up and the price of nothing is going down. But we do face what is an unprecedented situation. We have war on our continent for the first time in 40 years. We had a pandemic for the first time in 100 years, and a lot of the snapback in demand is contributing to inflation. We have the zero COVID policies in China, and we also have are at the end of an unprecedented period of monetary policy characterised by low inflation, low interest rates, and central banks all over the world printing a lot of money. So it's an unprecedented set of scenarios, things we haven't seen in 40 to 100 years, leading to an inflation crisis, a global inflation crisis, which is resulting in prices rising at a faster rate than at any point in 40 years. And I think it is important to say that budgetary measures and budgetary actions that the government has taken and will take can help to ease the cost of living for people and can help to ease the burden of inflation. But there's no budget, whether it's early or late or emergency or ordinary, that is going to get us on top of the inflation crisis. We need to tame inflation, and that requires a comprehensive approach, international action, action at a European level, and also domestic action as well. Because what we have to do over the next 6 months to a year is get inflation down and tame inflation, not fan the fires of inflation. That won't help anyone in the long run, and we have to avoid that. I do note in the Deputy's contribution that he made no acknowledgement whatsoever of what has been done to date, and I think that was unfair and inaccurate as well. Because listening to the Deputy's contribution, you would think nothing has been done at all in the past 7 months while this Dáil was in session. So let me recap on that. In January, we had an increase in the minimum wage, an increase in pensions, an increase in welfare payments, and also a reduction in income taxes for low, middle and high income people, all of which your party opposed. Since then, we've had reductions in VAT on electricity and gas, reductions in excise on petrol and diesel, €200 taken off people's electricity bills, and also an increase in the fuel allowance. And only this week, people saw an increase in the back-to-school clothing and footwear allowance for those least well-off families who need it the most. Contrast with Northern Ireland, where I think the increase was £7 or £8 or something in the back-to-school clothing and footwear allowance compared to 100 here. And people will see in the next few weeks, for example, an increase in the SUSI grant, the grant for people attending third level. And you will see the budget in September introducing a series of measures that people will see in their pockets within weeks. And then another set of more regular measures that will take effect in January 2023. So far from not responding to inflation and the rising cost of living, what you're seeing from government is a dynamic response. Action in January, action since January, action over the summer, more action again in September, and then more again next January. And that is what's required because this is a dynamic and unfolding situation.
Deputy Doherty.
You may think that this government's a dynamic government, that it's responding to the needs of citizens out here, but let me say this here. See, when you step outside the bubble of Leinster House, see when you stop with the backslapping and the hurraying and all of the rest in terms of your own colleagues, and talk to ordinary people out there, they'll tell you that tens of thousands of them are struggling to get by. We've seen survey after survey, report after report telling us how difficult it is for people. After all of what you've just talked about, there's still 1 in 3 families in this state in energy poverty. There's still 1 in 3 families struggling just to make ends meet. There are organisations far beyond Sinn Féin, the Central Bank, the Budget Advisory Watchdog, our own ESRI, all saying that the government has the capacity to do more and to do it now, but you refuse. You refuse. So the message clearly from government as you head off into the recess for the next 8 weeks in a budget that is 12 weeks away is you are on your own for the next while. There is no further interventions, and that is a devastating message for families out there. Absolutely crucifying message because many of them are struggling to pay the bills at the end of the week. So can I ask you, what message do you have to that cohort of individuals, many, many thousands, who are being abandoned as you go into the summer recess?
So do my colleagues on these benches, and I spend as much time talking to my constituents, working people, middle-income people, business people, people from all backgrounds as you do. And I can absolutely guarantee you, and I don't know what you'll be doing through the course of July or August, by the way, but I can absolutely guarantee you that ministers will be continuing to work. We'll have a Cabinet Subcommittee meeting this afternoon, for example, to discuss the situation in relation to migration and people coming from overseas. There are trade missions next week. There'll be a Cabinet meeting at the end of July. So we'll be working throughout July as normal, with the exception of the Dáil Chamber, and throughout August we'll be preparing the budget in September. I don't know what you'll be doing, Deputy, but it won't be doing any of those things.
Thank you very much. Tánaiste